Hello again, and welcome to the second video that's part of our Year 11 virtual information event. It's Mr. Bolter again. I hope you enjoyed the first video and you found it informative. In this second video, I'm going to give you some tips, tricks and advice on how you can best support your son through the challenging year of Year 11. Now, if the person on the screen looks familiar to you, and you believe that your son possibly shares some traits with him, then I wouldn't be surprised. This, of course, is Kevin the teenager from the Harry Enfield sketch show of a few years ago. And of course, in this sketch show, Harry Enfield played an extreme caricature of an obnoxious, rude, grumpy, sullen teenage boy. And whilst I don't genuinely think that our boys at Hurstmere are anywhere near the caricature of Kevin the teenager, I suspect at times they can display some of his traits and characteristics. And I have no doubt that as we embark on Year 11 and we move towards the exams next summer, your son may display more of these traits than usual. Well, in the first part of my presentation, I'm going to try and stick up for your sons and defend him and give you a little bit of context as to why he might be behaving this way. Well, here's the context. This is basically what your son is faced with over the next 9 or 10 months. He's embarking on one of the most challenging periods of his life so far. Next summer, he's going to be asked to sit around 20 to 30 exams in a very short space of time. He's going to be asked by you, and he's going to be asked by us to undertake many hours of extra work and extra revision. We're also going to ask him to make choices on what he wants to do basically with the rest of his life. He is going to want to maintain his friendships, maintain his social life, and possibly even explore some new relationships. According to him, he's already an adult, but according to us, he's still a child. But it's fair to say that he is on the cusp of entering the adult world. And on top of all that, he's got to do all of this in the context of a global pandemic. It's fair to say that he cannot navigate this year without the support of you. So again, I'm going to go into bat for your son and try and defend him and try and explain some of that grumpy behaviour that he might display. At the moment, his brain is still under development and it's wired differently. But there's some good news and there's some bad news. Roughly around this age, the teenage brain is more powerful than any other time in his life. But the teenage brain is also more vulnerable. It's more confused, it's more mixed up. It's basically working out what sort of person your son is going to grow up to be when he's older. Now, I really like this diagram, which shows you, or this cartoon if you like, showing you the teenage brain. Basically, the teenage brain is a bit of a mess. Okay? So you can see in this picture all of the different things that are going on in your son's brain at the moment. He is dealing with phone addiction. That's where a lot of his peer pressure and resistance comes from. He thinks he's the center of the universe. He thinks he's invincible. Teenagers genuinely think that no harm can come to them. That's why they sometimes might act slightly recklessly. His self-image is still under construction. He's working out who he is and how he views himself in the context, or how others view him, sorry. He's got millions of feelings stored in the black hole, perhaps the feelings that he doesn't really talk about. He's still interested in loads of sports. He's working out who he is. He's encountering heightened levels of stress. He thinks he's sleep deprived all the time, even though perhaps he spends longer in bed now than he ever has done. It's because his brain is rewiring itself. It's working out which bits of his childhood he's going to keep, which bits he doesn't need anymore, and basically working out who he's going to be for pretty much the rest of his life. And I imagine if you showed this picture to your son and asked him to tick some of the characteristics around the edge that best described himself, he'd probably tick quite a few. And lots of them would probably contradict each other. And that's because your son is working out who he is. Now, this seems like a really bad time to do exams. But on the one hand, it's not. Here's the good news. His brain is currently wired to learn new things. That's what it's doing at the moment. His brain is working out what to keep from his childhood, what it doesn't need anymore, and so it's ready to learn lots of new things. The brain's at its most powerful because it's at its optimum learning period. And as I said, at this stage of his life, parts of the teenage brain are disappearing. The brain is starting to shed bits of information it doesn't need anymore. So his brain is becoming fitter and healthier. Teenage brains are also not fixed. They are flexible. They are currently being shaped and molded. This means intelligence and also knowledge is not fixed. In a nutshell, teenage brains are better at remembering new ideas and knowledge. So on the one hand, this is the perfect or peak time for your son to be taking his exams. However, there is also some bad news. Although the teenage brain is working at almost peak efficiency, there are some things that it is still struggling to do. One of those is maintaining attention and focus. Another is seeing tasks through to the end. Another is self-discipline. Another is assessing and understanding risk. Like I said earlier, they all think they're invincible. And perhaps one of the most important ones is that they are struggling to manage their emotions. They may not ever admit it, but they are. And unfortunately, these things all get in the way of learning. So on the one hand, his brain is more powerful than it's ever been, but on the other hand, he's dealing with some things that make it hard for him to focus on his learning. Well, how do we overcome these things? They need adults to guide them. They need adults to show them the way and help them to do these things. They need adults to help them maintain attention and focus, to see tasks through to the end, to discipline themselves, to assess and understand risk, and to manage their emotions. So what are we trying to do this year? Well, obviously we're trying to teach them the knowledge to pass exams. That's what lessons are for, that's what revision classes are for, that's what catch-up sessions are for. But equally, through form time, through citizenship, and also through working with you, is we're going to try and give them the stamina, the power, and resilience to perform in those exams, so that they can see things through to the end, so that they can manage their emotions. And as I said, we'll do that through assemblies, we'll do that through form times, we will do that through mentoring students, or mentoring your sons, through exam workshops, and of course working with you. So what I thought I'd do is I'd give you some top tips to support your child through year 11 and through their exams. The first one is you have to be a role model. You have to set a good example by modeling the behavior you want your child to adopt. If we want him to be planned and organized for the week, then we need to model the behavior in ourselves and in our own practice. We need to eat healthily and well, keep hydrated, lead an active life, stay calm, be organized, and encourage good sleep habits. That all sounds easy in practice. How do we do some of those things? Well, the first thing is that you need to encourage your son to be a goal setter. You need to talk to him about what he wants to get out of this year and encourage him to keep those goals visible. If he's got a particular sixth form that he wants to go to, if he's got a particular job in mind, print that out and display it on his bedroom wall to keep focus. Talk to him about these goals regularly. How's he getting on with them? Is he closer to it than he was yesterday? And always give positive reinforcement. Connect with them about why they want to do that and what they want to achieve. You can play a key role in keeping your son on track by just keeping those goals in mind. And it is really important that your son keeps active during this academic year. Now it says on the screen around 60 minutes per day. That's not flat out exercise, but that's just keeping his body moving and moving around. Please encourage your son to keep active on a daily basis. Much of the modern teenage lifestyle is sedentary. It involves sitting in a chair, looking at a screen, often with a controller in their hand. So please encourage them to keep active and get out. Encourage them to carry out exercise in manageable chunks, so 3 times 20-minute sessions throughout the day. Try and get active at times at the weekend. Go out for a walk together and get fresh air. And again, in terms of that goal setting, help them plan out their weekly exercise schedule in advance. After exercise, everyone's brain, but particularly a teenage brain, functions much better. So encourage a revision session afterwards. Physically active students have much more active brains than inactive students. Here you can see brain scans of students taking a test. This brain scan was done with two groups. The first groups sat quietly for 20 minutes and then their brains were scanned while they took a test. Another group went out walking for 20 minutes and then they sat down and took a test. The red areas on the scans show the brain being very active. The blue areas are the least active. So physically active students will have more active brains. So please encourage them to be as active as they can. Alongside that, please encourage them to eat healthily. They need to fuel their body and their brains with healthy food. So please plan your family meals for the weeks. Carry out weekly food shops, write a list. Your son will be tempted, particularly when he's revising, by high sugary and fatty foods or drinks to give him that initial rush. Try to avoid that. Try to give him clean, fresh, healthy foods. By all means, have a couple of treat meals or meals out per week, but encourage them to eat breakfast every day and encourage them to keep healthy. And of course, hydration is the key to brain functioning. So make sure your child has bottles of water with them and that they are well hydrated. Particularly, of course, as well, when they actually go into exams. Eating the right food and drink can energize your system, improve alertness, and sustain your child through the long exams. What we're doing is we're creating healthy habits to get him through that intense examination period. And we have to start doing that now. Okay? Keep your sugar levels under control. Don't let him have too much sugar. Balance out the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats. Magnesium is a really important factor in health and nutrition. Vitally important in providing cells with energy. So anything on that list there that contains lots of magnesium will be good for his brain and good for his learning. And lots of omega-3s, lots of green vegetables, lots of chicken, salmon, whole grains, brown rice, eggs, nuts will all help give him an energy boost. And it's all the right kinds of foods that are going to help him maintain his stamina when he's studying and of course when he's doing exams. Now, he can't study forever. He can't study every hour in the day. So it's really important that he balances out his work with time out. Okay? But this, of course, needs to be planned. So encourage him to plan in and build in opportunities to take some time out every week away from study. For example, he might be going out for food. Of course, that's very difficult at the moment. Seeing some friends, relaxing, listening to music, reading a book, doing a hobby, going shopping and going to the cinema. Of course, all of this would have been a lot easier a year ago, but finding ways where he can relax productively and take time out is really important. But of course, your job is to make sure that he gets the balance right. If he's spending too much time on going out, too much time on seeing his friends or on the phone or socializing, then he needs to correct that and he needs your help to do it. Remember, self-control is not one of his strengths at the moment, so we need to model that for him. Alongside that, he needs sleep. Teenagers, on the one hand, seem to love sleep, but at all the wrong times. They love sleeping in the morning, but don't like going to sleep when they're supposed to at night. Young people, even teenagers, still need between around 8 or 9 hours sleep per night. Please help your son to do that by creating a relaxing evening routine. Make sure they don't eat too late. Avoid them having caffeine or sugary drinks. It's probably not a good idea for them to work or revise too late before going to bed because their brain won't switch off. And one of the worst things that keeps the brain active and stops sleep is digital devices too close before bedtime. So it's a good idea to encourage him to digitally detox a good hour or two before he goes to bed. And with that in mind, unplugging from technology is really, really important. Young people spend a lot of time on digital devices, particularly their phones, and whilst they have a huge benefit in certain areas, smartphone addiction could become a real problem. So please encourage them to unplug from technology every day. And like we said, particularly before going to sleep, and support your child to appreciate the world around them rather than being governed by their phone. When their phone's away, make sure they actually put it away on silent, particularly while they are concentrating on tasks, for revision and homework. They cannot revise effectively if they are distracted by a screen. Again, we're teaching them self-control, and phone obsession is not a good habit to develop, particularly as they get older. Indeed, you may even choose some time each day or week to switch off completely and digitally detox and unplug from technology as a family. I think that would be a really positive thing to do. Now, there may be times when your son gets frustrated or you get frustrated with your son, and that's completely understandable because this is going to be a stressful year. Wherever you can, try and set a good example by staying calm yourself. Try and create a relaxing environment for your child, and if they are stressed, give them some time to cool down and calm down, and then talk to them about how they can cope better, perhaps with their outbursts and with their stress. Give them positive distractions away from studying. Help them understand their stress and that their stress is not them, it's a symptom of what they're going through, and get them to focus on what they can control. If they get worried about revision, then doing nothing about it is not going to solve that problem. Switch to well, what can we do about it? Not what we can't do, but what we can do. And of course, you've got to promote a balance of academic studies and the other activities that they may enjoy during the week. It's all about creating a balance. Too much of one will detract from the others. Well, your son will experience some stress during this academic year. And is stress harmful or helpful? Well, a little bit of stress is actually good for your son. Your son does need to experience a little bit of stress to get the optimum performance out of him. And the definition of stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. And if you look at this graph, you can see that this bell curve shows the ideal levels of stress. If your son is put under too little stress or underload, he will be laid back, inactive, and won't perform as well as he can in his exams because he just won't put the work in. The optimum stress is in the yellow zone there, okay, going up to what's called the good stress peak. This is where it results in a bit of fatigue and a bit of tiredness, but doesn't lapse into exhaustion. If your son is becoming exhausted, he's probably under too much stress, what we call overload. And if this continues for too long, if there's too much stress for too long a period, it will result in burnout, anxiety, panic, anger, and in extreme situations, a breakdown. So some stress is good. It's okay to put your son under a bit of pressure, just not too much. If he's working hard and getting tired, that's good. If he's getting exhausted, that's bad, and he's under too much stress. So it's our job to work together to balance that stress out, to make sure that he's not overdoing it, but equally to make sure that he's not putting in too little effort. We want to find that sweet spot in the yellow zone that's called the optimum stress level. And finally, one of the most important things you can do is simply believe in your son. If you believe in your son, then statistically he is more likely to believe in himself, and that will result in better outcomes. Give them positive reinforcement. Don't lie to them, but give them positive reinforcement that they can achieve, that they can do what they want to do, that they can achieve great exam results. And do this as often as possible. Boost their confidence daily. Any little success that they have, celebrate it. If they do well on an assessment or well in a piece of homework, celebrate that achievement and reward them. All of these little mini goals are stepping stones to the big goal of achieving in his GCSE exams. Have high expectations, but achievable. If your expectations for your son are far too high and unachievable, then that will have the adverse or opposite effect on your son. Show them how proud of them you are, and just tell them that you love them. Highlight things that make them feel good and give them belief in themselves to help them achieve. With that in mind, one of the things I am going to ask you to do, if you would like to, is to write a letter to your son. Write a letter to your son, just telling him all the things that you'd like to tell him about your belief in him. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to send me that letter in an envelope, and I will, at some point over the next academic year, when I feel your son most needs it, I will give that letter to your son. These letters we've done in previous years and have been very successful, particularly in giving your son, giving the children that extra little boost that they might need during a low point. If you do wish to write a letter to your son, then please put your son's name on an envelope and put my name on it and hand it into the main office, and I will, at an appropriate time, give it to your son. We also find that it's best if you don't tell your son that you've written these letters, because it is a nice surprise for them when they do receive them. And all the things on this slide are the kind of things that would be good to include in that letter. And finally, just be supportive. Be a good listener, be approachable, encourage them to rest, encourage them to work, and show some understanding and empathy of what they are going through. Help them deal with their emotions and feelings, offer caring advice, and just be there for them. Now, I'm sure those good parents, you are doing all of the things, but it's just worth reminding ourselves that your son is going to be going through some additional stress this year, and he's going to need you and us more than ever. Just like with the previous presentation, if you have any questions about this presentation or anything you'd like to add or anything you'd like to ask me about, then please get in contact with me in the same way as instructed in the previous presentation. Thank you once again for listening. Best wishes to you and your family. Goodbye.